4, 3, 2, 1.
Good day. My name is Carolyn Stegman, and I'm a consultant with MAC. MAC means Maintaining Active Citizens, and it's yours and my area agency on aging. We've been in existence since 1972, and we're a private, not-for-profit organization with a board that comes from Worcester, Somerset, Wycomico, and Dorchester County. Today I have a very special guest, and actually more than a guest, she's now director of the new Family Caregiver Resource Center that was started at MAC this summer. Dr. Renee Fredrickson has been with us only a couple months, and already she is just doing so much for the community and for this very important subject. Welcome, Renee.
Thank you, Carolyn. A pleasure to be here.
How did you get into aging?
Well, you know, Carolyn, you heard me say it more than once that for my whole life I've actually tried to run away from aging. But I keep having birthdays, and that's a good thing. And I keep being called back to the field. In fact, I've worked in aging some 30 years. Most of that time in Minnesota, consultant stints here and there across the country and even in Europe. But my invitation to come back to aging and work for the MAC Center was like coming home. Very comfortable, and of course that invitation came with a ticket. It said Caregiver Resource Center, and that is near and dear to my heart, having been a caregiver, having received care, and having helped other caregivers. I know full well how important it is.
Okay. Well, we're so excited to have you on board.
Thank you.
And Renee, let's start at the very beginning. What is a caregiver? How would you define somebody who is a caregiver?
Well, that's a great question, Carolyn, because so often we don't consider ourselves caregivers.
I know.
We are taking care of a mother, or we're taking care of children. We're watching out for a neighbor. But we never call ourselves caregivers. We call ourselves neighbors. We call ourselves co-workers. We call ourselves mothers, daughters, nieces, granddaughters, grandsons, uncles, sisters. There are as many flavors of caregivers as there are food, I'm sure.
And so what are the levels of caregiving? Again, as you say, sometimes it might just consist of a small thing like taking over a casserole dish or taking them to a doctor's appointment or so on, but it also gets much more complicated than that, doesn't it?
Well, the examples that you gave are often considered a secondary caregiver. That caregiver who is second in line to help support the primary caregiver, the main caregiver, who is there constantly, who keeps track of the coming and going in that household. A primary caregiver is really often responsible for all the day-to-day things that happen in that in your receiver's life. Everything from personal cares to chores and housekeeping to managing the bookkeeping to making medical appointments to taking care of taxes. They're a domestic manager. And on top of all of that, they are that shoulder. They're the listener. They are that light of hope. They're the strength in the family. They carry a lot on their shoulders and have a lot on their plate. Sometimes, you know, as we go deeper and deeper into caregiving, we often fail to recognize just how deep we've gotten into it until it's too late. So hopefully the Caregiver Resource Center can act as a safety net for us, helping us to assess our situation first of all. I get up one morning and I'm just exhausted, and I don't know if I can make it through another day. At that point, if not well before, it's time to step back and say, is it time for a lifestyle makeover? If I can't face another day, what are the pieces of my life here? And how can I change those pieces, get greater control so that I don't spend so much time figuring out how to get through each day and everything done on the to-do list, but have more time for special conversations with my loved one and to really enjoy living those special moments together.
And to bring this also to the forefront, let's just take some examples of somebody who would be caregiving. For instance, someone with dementia or Alzheimer's. Many of those persons do not go into nursing homes. They stay at home. They're cared for by a family member. And many of them are able to walk around, but often will walk and get lost. Will wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and want breakfast or want to go someplace. So a lot of people are taking care of their dementia loved ones, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you know, Carolyn, that I have firsthand experience in that. We had 4 older members between my husband's family and my own that suffered each a different type of dementia. You know, there are many, well over 100 different types of dementia that have been identified. Let me just select one of those. It was the longest caregiving pleasure that I had. It started out with my father's mother, who only had one son, my dad, and he was no longer living. I was the one that was closest to that grandmother geographically, and so had the best opportunity to help her out. It started out with discovering a woman who had sort of given up on life. She had a poor diagnosis of medical condition in her eyes that told her she would have to have at least one, if not both eyes removed. She was a very private person, kept that inside, and quietly decided she would just excuse herself from life. When I made a visit to that grandmother and opened the door for some cool water to enjoy that afternoon, discovered instead of cool water there were cobwebs in the refrigerator, it was time to ask some questions. We were dealing with deep depression and some decisions that maybe didn't have all the information they should have had before making the decision. So as we talked, I discovered this situation with a diagnosis on her eyes. We decided together to get a second and third opinion. Long story short, her eyes were both saved with surgery. She saw, in fact, from one of those eyes better than she had since she had been 10 years old. The next step was to talk about her living situation and what other factors in her life made it so complicated that she really didn't care to live any longer. And what we discovered was the weight of her bookkeeping, of her housekeeping, and everything else at 88 years old was more than she could handle. So we went about putting together a plan. Let's plan on how we can simplify this life. We did that. We got rid of stuff. We took on new stuff, technical stuff that could help her more easily get through the day. The other thing we discovered that she had taken a fall in the bathtub, and in the course of that fall she had injured her neck, which caused the dementia that began to develop over years' time. When we first started taking care of one another, let me put it that way, I was a working caregiver, and it was sufficient if I came and checked on her after work each day and we had dinner in the evening. She had something to look forward to. It fit well into our schedule. But as time rolled on and the dementia deepened, it meant that we should have a nurse come in on occasion for a few hours in the morning, and I would continue to visit in the evening. It progressed even further, and she had less of her faculties and less ability physically to handle her own affairs. So, long story short, 2 hours a day grew to 4 hours a day, grew to 10 hours a day, grew to finally 24-hour supervision to help her get through her days comfortably and safely. As a working caregiver, did I have any hope of doing that alone? Not to mention the fact that I still had children at home? Not really without help. It took the help of my family. All of them were either in school or working as well, and it took the outside help of caregivers with professional skills, in the nurse that I didn't have. She came a couple hours each week, and then caregivers that were hired from the community to come in. This grandmother was fortunate. She had enough money to be able to pay for the care on her own. But in so many circumstances today, that isn't the case. But there are resources available to help families that are at a discounted rate or are even paid for by a federal program, a state program, or some association that you've had with some other group, be it military or some other service you've already invested in over your lifetime. So there is help out there, and the smart caregiver figures out their situation, figures out what it is they need, what their family unit needs, to be able to pay more attention to one another and live life to its fullest every moment of the way.
So don't wait till you're pulling your hair out.
No.
Get that in place sooner. I understand also that there are support groups for people that, let's say, have a dementia person, loved one that they're taking care of, where they can come in and share not only their ideas about how to take care of that person, but their frustrations and also their joys.
Support groups are wonderful opportunities for people to make friends, to find support from one another, and to gain fresh information. The information might be on ways of caregiving, shortcuts and handy tips on caregiving, everything from managing medications and keeping track of medical issues to finding ways to sort of go on vacation, the stay vacation at home with your loved one without leaving the house. So they are very valuable. Unfortunately, support group has gained kind of a nasty name. You know, and when you see television programs such as Go On mocking the support group, you know that we have some work to be done there. So if from the Caregiver Resource Center you hear about a social gathering, it might in essence be the new version of a support group. But I heartily recommend support groups and social gatherings for caregivers so that they have an opportunity to visit with others, to take a deep breath outside the home, to get a hold of new information that can help them immensely.
Okay. So let's say that I'm a caregiver, taking care of my father, which also I did.
I know you did.
And so now I hear about you, the Caregiver Resource Center, okay, and I dial the phone and call you up. What can I hope to find from you? What is it all about?
Well, first of all, I'll want to know, or one of our caregiver liaisons will want to know what your circumstance is and how strong your support network is. Do you have friends? Do you have people from your church or your civic clubs that are helping you out, neighbors that can help you out? Do you have money to pay for services? Do you even need services? Very often it's not as much a service that's needed as a retrofit on your shower or your bathroom, or an easier and safer way of getting in and out of your home. It might be something as simple as being able to read what we have in front of us. So it might mean a new pair of glasses. So in essence, that person on the other end of the line at the Caregiver Resource Center is going to listen to your story, help you sort out the parts of it, and come to some solutions for those parts that aren't fitting so well anymore, because life changes as we roll on, and we need to adjust and make those changes along the way so we can live life to the fullest.
Would you go out into the home and make a home assessment if you had to?
If the family were comfortable with that, and if it seemed necessary to do that, absolutely. Sometimes the best way of figuring out the situation is to see it firsthand. A picture is worth 1,000 words, and touch is worth even more.
Well, let's go back again to our examples of my father who had Alzheimer's disease and died, and your grandmother. And I call you up and I'm frustrated. I'm doing a good job. I love my dad, but I'm so frustrated at this point because he's keeping me awake. I'm not getting a good night's sleep. I have to work. Where are the resources for someone like me who needs help? What are some things you might suggest?
The resources are found in your family, your friends, your neighbors. If those have all been exhausted, the resources might be more formal in nature. It might be a daycare center for daytime rest.
They have those?
They have those. We certainly do. The nearest one to this studio is Parsons Day Center in the Mac Center here in Salisbury. We have daycare centers scattered throughout the 4 counties. And by the way, this Caregiver Resource Center pays close attention to our caregivers in all 4 counties on the Lower Eastern Shore.
Okay. So we're not just talking about Salisbury.
No, absolutely not. And there will be a community liaison in each of those counties, and we will soon have telephone numbers out. But in the meantime, don't be afraid to call us in Salisbury so we can get you connected to help. So whether it is a short-term stay at a daycare on a regular or an every once in a while basis, or whether it's the need for a weekend or an overnight, that can be arranged. And we have long lists of resources at the Caregiver Resource Center that we can tap into. Some are covered under long-term care insurance. Some might be covered under a veteran's benefit or something of that nature. I've even seen people use a gift certificate to take advantage of a daycare or a respite situation.
And where in yours and my example of taking care of one generation up or 2, our elderly parents and grandparents, sometimes you see on the shore, more than sometimes I guess, many times, the frail, taking care of the frail. An older couple, children are not close, people are calling Mac from Utah about mother, and mother is almost as sick as her husband, who is the care receiver. Do you see a lot of that?
Oh, you remind me of an eye-opener that came in my youth in working with aging. I got a call from a gentleman who was convinced that his mother needed a little help. She was celebrating her 100th birthday in Minnesota on Valentine's Day. Now, you know that's in February. It's in the dead of winter. And so I went out, not pretty naive, and went out to the home early that morning. We'd had a tremendous snowstorm the night before. And what did I find but about a 50-foot path carefully devoid of snow. This 100-year-old woman had started celebrating her birthday on that morning by shoveling a nice, neat path for me to the front door. The
woman did it. Oh.
The 100-year-old woman did it. I got into the home, and she'd already baked cookies and things for us to enjoy that morning because I could smell it in the air, and fresh brewed coffee that morning. It was obvious that she was really pretty independent, and I wondered if it was a case of isolation. Maybe she needed to get out more with other people, but she certainly seemed able to do that. Her son, the one that had placed the call, had promised to meet me at his mother's house later that morning. He appeared at the door, and I was surprised to find that her son was 80 years old. Well, Renee, what would you expect? The mother is 100 years old, about
Right.
20 years difference.
Yes.
Her son would be 80 years old. And he had just retired as an instructor from Arthur Murray Dance Studio.
Oh.
And because he retired, because he had suffered a minor stroke and wasn't able to get around as easily as he did earlier, he felt that his mother surely must need help because he needed help. So sometimes you're in for a surprise. yes, the caregiver needed help in this case, help to understand where his mom was really at, and then some personal help for himself. But in other cases, spouses that are of the same age and taking care of one another. The spotlight in aging has moved from the care receiver to shine on the caregiver as well, because so often they are the same age or many times older than the person that they are actually taking care of. Modern medicine has given all of us the opportunity to live longer, and that means the disabled from birth on, or whatever the circumstance, accident, are living longer as well. And so often it's an older individual in their family, a parent, who has been taking care of them for all of these years.
Yes.
And they don't move with the same agility, and they have some needs that need to be addressed themselves. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, Carolyn, because it's becoming more and more commonplace all the time. And there is help. Visited one family just recently where back problems were an issue, and with some adaptive equipment, really simple things that prevented picking things up off the floor as often and more easily moving the younger person in the family who was an adult size now. You know, it made the life easier. It made it possible for them all to continue to live at home as a family longer.
I know that at MAC, or actually in the Holly Community Center, which is located in the MAC building, they have an Assistive Technology Center, which if somebody has problems with their eyes, like macular degeneration, or have had a stroke, or any number of things, that they have all kinds of devices that can make our life easier, prevent accidents, prevent people from getting frailer, try and keep it, whatever the difficulty or disability is, to try and keep them as healthy as possible for as long as possible. And so that's part also of the Caregiver Resource Center too, is to use assistive technology, right?
Absolutely. You know, the first day that I walked in there, I didn't know if I was in a magician's workshop or just what I had found, because assistive technology has gone far beyond the cane, the walker, the set of glasses, the special silverware, or grabbing tools that we knew of in the past. Today they employ high technology. I've seen them use the ever-popular iPad to make connections between doctors these days. So a doctor who specializes in a particular disease and is located, let's say, across the bridge, doesn't require that patient to make that long trip across the bridge, but could visit them screen to screen in their own home.
Right, and see them real time and everything.
Yes. Absolutely. I didn't think I'd grow old enough to live in the world of the Jetsons, but here we are. I mean, we are. We can see one another as we talk to one another right in our own homes. And it makes use of our telephone lines, so the reach of those specialists goes farther and farther into our communities today, and Holly Community knows all about those things.
Right. And I think, too, given our area, which is many thousands of square miles, I mean, there's a lot of rural area and, you know, dirt roads down backcountry roads, and where some of those people live, and it's very difficult sometimes for them to move out of that setting, and to be able to get in there through the phone and through technology. It can be very helpful to those people that don't want to leave their home that often they've been in all their life.
And I don't blame them.
Yes.
Every time I travel one of those country lanes, I don't blame them one bit.
One of the things you talked about, Renee, was Makeover. The what one can do for themselves to make it better, or make over their life and think about it. Could you talk about those now?
Well, a lifestyle makeover can be as simple as 7 steps, and take one of those steps each day. In fact, I put together a little checklist. We could go through a longer checklist here for caregiving, but aside from that, we can make it a simpler task and take on just one of those steps each day. Imagine that on a Monday, you decide to take stock of yourself and your living conditions. How much does this old place really support me? Would it be safer? Would it be easier to live in if I had a ramp that assisted me in and out of the front door? If I had grab bars in my bathroom? Simple little things like that. If I had a different handle on my sink? I've made that list on Monday, and on Tuesday, I make a phone call to the Caregiver Resource Center, and I describe my situation. I've got this list of changes that need to be made in my home and things I need for me, and I figured out which ones I can take care of and which ones I'm going to need a little help from the outside on. Miss Person at the Caregiver Resource Center, can you help me sort this out and give me a list of places to call or things that I should do to help my plan along? Certainly, be glad to. There's no wrong door at the Caregiver Resource Center, and the door is always open to help people. And we'll work with you until we get the situation solved and more comfortable. So that's Tuesday. We've made our calls. We've gotten a new list of resources that we can tap into to help our situation. And on Wednesday, we begin making those calls so that we have a handle on where to go and what to do. And we make appointments, we order things, and get the ball rolling. On Thursday, we're going to finish up those calls, and we're going to actually pick up some of those materials or make some of those appointments. We actually visit with some of those specialists. Maybe that visit is a personal face-to-face visit to the Caregiver Resource Center. And on Friday, we're going to follow up on those calls, gather up any paperwork that we might need for applications for services or to put some order to our medicine cabinet. And let's not forget about that special session coming up on Med Talks. And then on Saturday, our 6th day, we're going to start out fresh with a brief letter or card to a friend or relative, an email or a phone call to tell them what we discovered about ourselves, the resources we discovered at the Caregiver Resource Center, and how things are working out toward a new lifestyle makeover. And on Sunday, guess what? It's the day of rest, the day of peace of mind and comfort, because I accomplish all those things step by step throughout the week, and I'm well on my way to more comfortable, happy life with my loved one.
So in essence, one does not have to go through this alone. There are all kinds of supports, and also supports to help them organize, to look at it in a methodical way. What can make this better for us and for my loved one and for me as the caregiver? And so there is help out there. Well, Renee, I want to thank you very much for being here today. We're really proud to have you at MAC. Renee Fredrickson is director of the Caregiver Resource Center at MAC. A few years back, Rosalind Carter said that there are 4 types of people in the world. Those that have been caregivers, those that are caregivers now, those that will be caregivers, and those that need caregiving. And that pretty much encompasses all of us. And at any given time, millions of people are taking care of loved ones or friends. On the Eastern Shore, that translates to thousands and thousands of people taking care of loved ones. And now we have a resource center to help you, to help your loved ones, and to really make this, as Renee said in the beginning, a positive experience. And I thank you very much for listening. This is Carolyn Stegman from MAC. Have a good day.
Would you like to see your community organization or nonprofit group featured on PAC 14? To get started, Contact us at 410-677-5014 or visit our website at www.pac14.org. PAC14 is a great way to connect with your community.